Hey there, this video is going to be a demo overview tutorial sort of thing for strokes. I've been developing this for 9 months now. There's quite a lot of stuff to unpack, and I'm going to try and cover as much of it as possible here. So strokes is a Microsoft Live sequencer. It generates MIDI notes, so we can sequence drums or we can sequence melodic things with it. It also generates control signals, which are kind of linked together with those rhythms or those MIDI notes that we generate. There's two different methods of creating control signals with this, which we'll get to later. First, let's look at this section here. So this is our rhythm generator. When we hit play in live, we see that it fires up. And let's look at like one channel. So one channel, this channel 1 here, is going to play C1. Let's put a drum rack here. And we can see C1 playing there. I've made some like little drum presets here, which I'm gonna load on, so we can listen. Okay, so length, radius, stroke, shift. What is going on here? So length is the length of this, what I call a trigger buffer. We can set it from anything to 1 to 64. So we see we've got 64 steps here, which we can add strokes into. Strokes are like triggers, note triggers. But you'll see when this is playing, it's only getting to 16, and then it's resetting. And the reason for that is this radius control here. And radius, the way I think of it, is like it's the reset point for our rhythm. So it's set to 16 now, it'll play 16 16th notes, and then reset. Resets to 32. It's going to get halfway here, and then loop back around. One way of kind of simplifying this, I added in this section here which is called like the radius link, and the radius link lets us lock together the rhythm, the length and the radius parameter. So anything that we set to length the radius for this channel will follow it. So if we set like 6, it's going to loop after 6. Generally the way that you get kind of interesting stuff out of this is through these two parameters here. Just kind of, well, yeah, the relationship between these two parameters. We can set in like weird stuff like, I don't know, 13. If we set it to 16, it's going to loop every 16th notes, which is every bar. So we can just throw in some weird stuff here. And we get like a repetitive rhythm. If we like don't use a rounded radius, that's when we get into really interesting polyrhythmic territory, which is I'm probably not gonna be able to demonstrate properly in this because it's just kind of keep things moving along. So it's the same on all these channels here. These on and off switches here are like mutes. We can adjust the rate at which the sequence advances using this here. So we can go 16th, we can go 8, we can go quarter notes or half notes. I'm gonna punch some numbers in here. The extent of my script is these numbers on a piece of paper in front of me. Everything outside of that is just going to be just jammed out. Oh yeah, one thing I didn't mention is shift. So shift, once we have our triggers in the buffer, we can move them left or right using the shift. So if you see, if I put it on, every single like trigger gets moved along to the right one until it goes all the way around, and then we go back to 0. So this channel here is what I call the master channel. And what the master channel does, it doesn't actually generate notes, but it generates accents. So here I have 32 step pattern, which is going to loop every 16. Let's set this to 32. And there's 8 strokes in it. And this is going to give us a 4/4 pattern of accents. And the way that we control the level of the accents is with this here. So this is going to be the velocity of our notes that have accents, and this is the velocity of notes that don't have accents. If we turn this to 0, it's actually muted. So these strokes, like these triggers, will only play on this here. Whenever there's an accent, it'll play. And we can turn this back up. It's kind of useful for doing some like variations and stuff like that. You can create space in your patterns just by like reducing this velocity to 0. Above that we've also got a swing. and you'll be able to hear that here. And yeah, this swing parameter, I've kind of designed it so it can get really, really far out. Yeah. So that's a basic overview on strokes. Oh yeah, one other thing. Added in version 2, you can now tell this to go forwards, backwards, or palindromically. So with this here, when it gets to the end, it'll play backwards. You can see it's pretty cool. It's kind of useful. One thing I like to do with this actually is I'll sometimes just put like one stroke in here. Let's set this to play. And then we can modulate the shift parameter. And whenever the two cross over, we get a trigger. It's pretty cool for doing like generative stuff. Anyway, where were we? Let's get back to what we're on for. So 24, 32, 4. So here's our rhythm. A bit of a lack of foresight on my part is that none of these voices actually respond to velocity. But we can do some other cool stuff with this, which I'll show you later. So we've got our basic rhythm going here. Let's just set this to go forward. Let's just listen to this for a second. And yeah, let's add in some more strokes here. So we've kind of generated rhythms now. Next, let's look at generating some control signals. So we have two modules that let us generate control signals. We've got the matrix, which is a collection of analog style step sequences. And then we have weights. And weight is, it kind of acts similar to an envelope follower. We'll look at that one later. Let's first look at matrix. So matrix will follow the pattern of its corresponding channel. So channel 1 is here, channel 2 is here, channel 3 is here, so on and so on. And the way that I've designed this is that we have a bunch of step sequences here which overlap. So channel 1 goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then repeats. Channel 2 goes 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, and then repeats. Channel 3 goes down vertically, down these columns. Channel 4 goes down here, down here. Master does the same thing. So the master 2 will follow the pattern of these strokes here. It'll advance one stage through this every time it receives a stroke on the accent channel. And then master 1 just goes through 16th notes. And this kind of builds some kind of interesting relationships between all the different channels, because if I tweak this dial here, it's going to have a knock-on effect on channel 3, master 1 and master 2. So it's a way of getting a bunch of sequences into a really, really tight space here. And so let's map this to a control, and I'm actually going to go to channel 4, this one here. If we open the map, we can assign the matrix channels and weights channels to parameters in live. So this is my tom. Let's run the sequence. And if I map, we're on channel 4, so if I map channel 4 to the pitch, and then start putting in some values here. So now these 8 parameters here are going to sequence our pitch. Oh yeah, one thing worth noting as well. There's a maximum of 8 steps in every sequence, but if we set the strokes to 3, it'll only advance through the first 3, and it'll reset every time the radius resets our pattern. So what that means is that we effectively get per step a per step value for every single stroke in the sequence. So yeah, when we turn this up, we can sequence a melody. I'm just going to like quickly jam out some stuff here. So with channel 1, it's going to advance here, 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 here. So let's set this to the mod amount of our bass drum. And let's give it a startup boot. So you can see it every time we get a new trigger or a new stroke on this channel, the mod amount is going to update. And what I'm going to do actually is I'm going to assign these controls here to a MIDI control. So bear with me for a sec. So now I've got these controls on a little MIDI controller here. Just move it around a little faster. On channel 2, which is this kind of rim shot, I'm going to map it to, let's say, the mod mix. And then on channel 3, let's set it to the noise mix. Let's see what this sounds like altogether. I'm just going to quickly move these around so we can... And yeah, the interesting thing about this sequencer is that if I change one parameter here, so you see this one changing, it changes what's happening on like every single channel. Let's look at master 1. What should we map here? Let's do the decay of the snare. Cool, and this one will be pretty cool as well. We'll map that. So now every time we get a trigger here, the pitch is going to change in accordance with these parameters that we set. Cool. So next, let's look at weights. So as I said before, weights I kind of imagine it as being a bit like an envelope follower. It takes the strokes triggers and turns them into control signals. And the way it does that, if you're familiar with like an analog mixer that uses sends and returns, you can imagine going along this one channel here, we have send A, send B, send C, and send D. And when I increase the value here, we go down, all of these are kind of summed together, and we get to this section here. Let's actually map this to, I'm going to throw a filter in after this. So let's map weights to the filter frequency. And now we see whenever we have a trigger on this channel, we get a snap of the frequency going up. We can adjust the initial value of the frequency using this control here. Let's just see how this sounds altogether. It's almost like gating with these controls here. So we can do these kind of like snappy rhythmic pulses with this control, and then we can use these two parameters here to smooth those triggers into smoother control signals. As well, while we're playing with these, we can adjust the minimum and maximum for each control. So in a similar vein, I'm going to put in a bit reduction thing, and let's put a drum bus after it just to tighten this up a little. So using channel B, this one here, I'm going to map that to, let's say the downsample here. Let's set the initial value all the way to the bottom, and then let's say whenever we get a trigger on this here, let's turn up the downsampler and smooth it. So this final parameter on weights is a delay, and what this lets us do is generate sort of like, it takes this control signal that we generate and just delays it by a certain amount. But what this means is that we get this kind of like, it kind of feels like a call and response. So let's delay it by an eighth note, and then whenever this triggers, it waits an eighth note, and then we'll trigger the modulation. It's just a kind of way of loosening up the pattern a little bit more. When you modulate stuff like this, you can get like semi-random generative stuff. I'm going to map this to some other parameters inside here. Let's say let's maybe take this off. It's a little bit long. So let's map weights B to the mod amount of the snare drum. And we'll map D to the mod amount of the tom. And then when I put some values in here, we should start to hear some changes. So we've got a pretty complex pattern going on here already. Let's look at one more module before we look at patterns. So here, we've got this quite busy pattern on the toms. Let me just take that ramp off on the toms. So we've got this quite busy pattern here. And let's say that we've got this pattern running, but this is taking up too much space. I want this rhythm to still be here, but I want it to be there less so. Shares will let us do this. So while the pattern's playing, Shares is listening to whatever we've got going on up here, and it's counting how many strokes we have on each channel. And this value, this green value in the middle here, is a percentage of the strokes. So you see now that we've muted it, we've got a lot of these strokes here. And what these faders do is it sets a target share of the pattern. So if I turn, so we're on channel 4 here with this like tom bass riff. If I turn this down, we'll start dropping tom notes. So yeah, it's going to drop out the occasional note now until it reaches this destination here. And then if I turn this back up, we'll get all those strokes back in. And so if you like MIDI map these, you can basically play your patterns really dynamically. You can create space. So let's say I just want more of that bass riff, I can turn all these down. Let's say I want more kick. I kind of like to have them hovering around the target here, and we end up with this like sort of semi-random kind of like, does it trigger, does it not trigger? And like I say, it's happening in real time. These calculations are constantly ongoing. You can see these moving up and down just as this pattern goes. If I mute one, you'll see this just drop off. It takes a little while to update. I think it measures the last like 64 strokes of each pattern, so it needs 64 strokes to update. There we go. So you see now we've got 1% in here. And if I turn it back on, we'll watch it go back up. So I'm just going to move these around a lot. This matrix pattern around. So let's say that I'm filling this pattern here. We've got 4 slots where we can save our patterns in this patterns module. So let's save this one to A. And let's make a variation. I'm going to move all these matrix values. I'm also going to just change this pattern up here. So this. let's say I'm into this pattern. Oh, let's change some of this as well. Oh, if you've got a push to as well, all this stuff can be done like without using the mouse and keyboard. I'm just kind of doing this for quickness. So let's say I'm liking this pattern. Let's save this one into B. And now we can move between our two patterns using this section here. So we assign a pattern to the left and a pattern to the right, and then we crossfade between them. So we're on B. I go back to A. Here's the other pattern that we worked on before. All the values will snap and change, and we can blend between them. So there's pattern B, there's pattern A, and anything in between. So using the same thing, we can map patterns to, let's say this pattern here, we'll save this one to C. And then whatever's here, we'll save this to D. So now we've quickly generated 4 variations in our patterns, and we can jump between them using this grid here. On the top left we have A, on the top right we have B, bottom left we have C, bottom right we have D. And we can just move between them all. Using these buttons here. In a similar way that when we go from A to B here, we crossfade, it's the exact same process going across this top line here. So we're at A and B, B and A, and then B. Likewise going down we have A, B, C and D. If we go down here, we're now blending between B and D. So we can use this to quickly just generate new ideas, new patterns. I like to have like the master recording and maybe the MIDI output recording, so any of these like cool little bits I can kind of capture. One other thing that we should look at as well is the rotate. So what the rotate dial does is it pushes all of these MIDI notes here down a level. So if I move this here, this channel here is now triggering C#1. So we've moved channel 1 to actually control our rim shot. When we move it here, it's now going to control the snare. And here, the tom. And that happens across the whole pattern. So it's just even more way of getting variation in your patterns. So when we were moving between stored patterns here, as you see, all the parameters on the UI will move towards their destination where this pattern is in. And because we've got this MIDI control down here, we want to control this in real time. If we move this fader, all the values are going to snap to whatever they were in the pattern and just overwrite whatever we put in. So one thing that I made to work around this, if you want to use this like in a live situation with a MIDI control, we can open this window, which is here, and we can actually decouple any section of the UI from receiving pattern changes. So if we turn off waves, if we turn off matrix, now when we change pattern, the values don't update. That means that we can jam using our MIDI control. We can still move between our patterns, but we have independent control of this. So if I turn this back on, now you'll see whenever we change pattern, it snaps back to our values from before, or I can turn it off. I can turn it off and just perform it. So yeah, that's the basic overview of strokes. Yeah, there's not really much else to cover. That's basically all the features of this in one. Maybe when you use this, you'll use less annoying drum sounds. So yeah, it's designed to work in real time. So while this is going on, what I'd recommend you do is set up this to record your master. You can also record the MIDI coming from the drum rack. So let's just do a quick demo of this. So I've got an audio channel all recording my master. I've got a MIDI channel recording my drum rack. Let's hit record here. And then if we look at this, all of those triggers that we just made there are inside this MIDI clip. So we can go back and we can do some edits on this. It's a good way of like storing the output of this, because yeah, it's designed to work in real time. So yeah, that's a basic overview of how this whole thing works. I hope you enjoy it. I hope you make something a bit more interesting and a bit less annoying than what I just did. But yeah, anyway, nice one.